Most of the time when you're thinking like a mad scientist on TV, oftentimes I would say that's actually more of a mad engineer, because they're not like doing, like mutation cell research. Usually they're like building a death ray, and death ray is totally an engineering thing. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So,
see, I feel like this is a nuance we should all be clear on.
This is absolutely, this is a nitpick that I need to nail down for people.
History, I'd like to follow me down the rabbit hole. History, I'd like to, frankly, I want to know.
Hello, and welcome to HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck, where history is a party and everybody's coming. I am your host, Dawn Brody, and today, we HILF Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist, devil-worshipping sex addict who got America into outer space. I know, right? Now, listen, if you're a big HILF fan, then you may recall that Jack Parsons' name came up briefly in episode 54. Okay, that's the one on the other creepy genius pervert, Aleister Crowley. In fact, Jack Parsons, he was not only a devotee of Crowley's, but he was briefly best buds and roommates with the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. Okay? I mean, this is an incredible tale. And it touches on the occult, outer space, World War II, Hollywood, and just like so much masturbation. Like so much masturbation is everywhere. Okay, and get this. As my guest, we have Cristina Van Epps, and she is an engineer currently working at the institution Jack Parsons helped found, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Okay, Cristina is also a podcaster, a sci-fi aficionado, and hell of a Dungeons and Dragons player. Okay, who, for the record, does not speak for the JPL. Okay, but she does have so much to say about the nature of magic. Let's get started. I'm just so delighted to have you here, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is such a huge honor because we have mutual fans and we are fans of mutual stuff.
Yes.
You came to me by way of Ryan Keeley.
Yes.
Who listeners will remember from episode 61 on Jesse James. She remarkable for a number of reasons. One, she was one of the most well-read guests.
The amount of books that she, like the variety that she reads, it boggles me. Every time I go to her house, there's just some like new thing that she's reading. I recommend, she and I shared this interest in niche histories as a genre.
Yeah.
Recently I read this book called Banana by Dan Koppel, which is just literally the history of bananas, the fruit.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I know the perfect person to recommend this to, and it's Ryan Keeley, because she loves that kind of stuff.
And she'll have finished it before.
Oh, she already has. Yeah.
Yeah.
She finished it in like 2 days, and she's like, hi, I have a lot of thoughts. I want to talk to you. So.
And it's remarkable because she is also, listeners will perhaps remember her because she is an adult film star.
Yeah.
I don't think being an adult film star and being a vivacious reader are necessarily mutually exclusive, but sometimes people have these ideas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that Ryan and I have a very active text chain.
Fantastic.
That is exclusively book reviews
Love
and recommendations, invitations to comedy shows, and also just like, have you read the latest by Will McKenna, some deep, and she'll not yet. And then 2 days later, I loved it.
Yep. That's her. She'll get the audiobook of it, and then she'll be puttering about her house she's like a one-woman entire construction crew, and she'll be doing handiwork or whatever and listening to the podcasts or the audiobooks or whatever at the same time. She's amazing in that way. Yeah.
Amazing. And you guys know each other. I don't know if this isn't necessarily how you met, but I know you through her because of your podcast.
Yes.
The Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
Yes. I Seduce the Dragon.
Yes.
Which is we met because of the game, which we were playing before it turned into a podcast. But we met through mutual knowing of the dungeon master for that game, our friend Jess. I'd never met her before that, but it was like Jess was like, I know the perfect group of people to become friends. She was selecting like a friendship A team, and she was like, these people will get along, and then like forces all into a D&D game together.
And she nailed it.
No, she was spot on with her judgments. We're all great friends. Yeah.
And it's such a cool, because you guys have it in like your description or whatever. It's an adult film star,
yes,
a rocket scientist, a doomsday prepper. Is that how she's described, or is that just how Ryan described her to me?
I think that's Flanders, right? I think she's called a cowgirl lawyer. Is her like little epitaph's not the word. That's what they say when you're dead. It's the
she's still with us. Bless her heart.
She'll outlive us all probably. It's her little like lower third subtitle. She is an entertainment lawyer living on a ranch in Montana. Doing like, she's a volunteer firefighter. She is out there like not hustling cattle. That's when you're stealing it. She's
saying,
ranching.
Hey, do I have an offer for you, cattle?
Do I know some steer you might be interested in? No, she is also like they're all like Swiss Army people. All of these people, like my co-stars, it's Jess, Dana, Flanders, Ryan. All of them are like some of the most amazing people that I've ever met. And I am constantly just like, they're so cool.
I love that.
They're so cool.
And you would think these personalities in real life would be like compelling enough, like what? And yet they cast themselves within the amazing world of Dungeons and Dragons and go ahead and interact that way.
We all just decided we're all of these. They're all so fascinating, but they want to just play pretend in a fantasy world and fight monsters and make dick jokes constantly. That's the whole show.
And it's this convention that there's these nerds out there not living their lives who are pretending to live lives in Dungeons and Dragons, and you're like, nah. There's people living fucking amazing sci-fi fantasy lives.
Absolutely.
Who also like going into dungeons. Because you in that triad, you're the rocket scientist.
That's true. Yes. I work for NASA JPL. Yeah. I'm a mechanical design engineer for them. Yeah.
It's so fucking cool. I have so many questions.
I'm happy to answer.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I highlighted my questions in a subtle green font here.
Ooh, matching.
Exactly. And you have this gorgeous hair. Yeah. For those of you who aren't looking at the video and like, hey girl, hey, we got video. Right? Hello. Can you believe it? And like, God. I knew you were hot. I checked you out. I was like, she's so hot. But I didn't know you were going to show up all green hair and like HOT double T girl. Like, so
my head's going to get too big for the frame. Thank you so much.
That's all right. Your head's never too big for audio. So
perfect.
And let's see, before we get to the rocket scientist stuff, you're not only on the Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
No, I have another podcast I do.
Tell us about that.
So the other podcast I do is called Cults, Cryptids, and Conspiracies, which is me and my friend Chelsea. She's a video editor for IGN. So she does like video game reviews, things like that. And both of us have a weird love, but we're horrible skeptics. None of us believe, like we're the most skeptical people in the world, but we absolutely love talking about like ghosts and like Bigfoot and stuff like that. So we have this podcast where we discuss just weird stuff and our absolute fascination and love for it, but also like, what do you think it is? Like that kind of thing.
I can't recommend this podcast enough. And the good news is that if people jump in on this thing, they got over 400 episodes.
Oh, I think we technically have over 400 episodes. Some of those, there's like a spin-off podcast we do, which is reviewing paranormal romance novels. Oh my God. So some of those episodes are us reviewing romance novels also.
Okay. So what you're saying is it's a deep well.
It's a deep well of content. There's a varied pool of things to draw from there.
See, and I gotta tell you, it's my personal favorite point of view when it comes to conspiracy theories, which is the skeptic, because that's me. And I used to lead tours through haunted locations.
Oh my God, I love that.
And it was so great. And I would
love
always
ghost
say,
tours so
loved
much.
it. I loved it. And I would say to I would tell my groups, I'm going to scare the crap out of you. And I want you to know right now, I only tell you the stories that I've heard. Mm-hmm. If you want to ask me what I believe, that's an entirely different set of circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And we get to the end of the tour and they would be like, so you don't believe any of this stuff? And I'd be like, I don't think I do believe most of it. No. Mm-hmm. And then they'd say, would you spend the night here? And I'd say, not on your fucking life. So figure that out.
That's so common. No, that's so
figure
common.
That out. I can't
it's that whole thing where it's like, listen, I don't know if it's ghosts, but the vibes are rancid, so I'm not going to be here for
Something's up.
Something's up. Where did you do ghost tours though?
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Has these amazing old They're like bootleggers caves down by
Love
the
that.
river.
Yes.
And they carved out these caves and made it into a speakeasy during Prohibition.
Amazing.
Bunch of people died in there, right? Got murdered, all sorts. But then there's also the legions of people after it was closed down and abandoned. Your unhoused, your vagrants, your what
Right.
have yous who go in there and don't come out again.
Yes.
So there's a
whole lot of history.
boy.
That's what I
spooky.
love about ghost tours the most is because like A, it's a spooky story. Love a spooky story. But B, you are going to learn just like a lot of local history also. And I'm a huge nerd for that. I love that kind of thing.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. You can imagine how insufferable it is to go on like a road trip with me because I'm like, oh, can we just really quick? I saw the sign that was like local museum. And I know they just have like Paul Bunyan's toenails or whatever they think they have in there.
But what if
can't
it's a
wait.
fun little stop? What if there's a fun little story?
This is what I'm saying.
I understand you.
Thank you.
I sense a connection here.
You see what I mean? You work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, NASA. Fucking A. Your job is as, what did you say, an engineer?
I am a mechanical design engineer. So when we're making I'm not doing like the rocket fuel part of the jet propulsion side of it. I'm doing for Jet Propulsion Laboratories. A lot of the work they're doing is like rover kind of stuff, probes, satellites, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my job is the mechanisms on those devices. So if you need, I'm in the small payloads department. So if there's like a little moving part or some kind of little machine that needs to do a little task, like a robot arm, for instance, that's the kind of thing that I'm designing.
Okay, so we've got out there, and obviously stop me if I get any of this wrong. We got the Mars rovers, we got Perseverance and
Yes.
Curiosity.
Yes.
And they're on Mars and they're rolling around and every once in a while they got to pick up something.
Yes.
And the mechanics that get that little arm out there to pick them up, some of that was designed by you.
So I unfortunately, that was before me, they launched, but I actually was working on the Mars sample return project. That's when I was hired on, was to work on that. Unfortunately, congressional budget cuts.
Yeah.
They slashed a lot of that project, or they're changing the timeline around, I should say. A lot of it's still going on, but the part that I was working on, which is the actual like, let's get our boys home kind of part of it with the samples. That part they pushed back to do later. So I fingers crossed that I will be working on that again when it comes back around. But the projects I'm working on are currently looking at like Earth's climate. And tracking. There's one project I'm working on that's like tracking tropical storms and how they've been changing over the past few years. Which I'm not doing like the sensor parts of that. That's some other people above my pay grade who have electrical engineering degrees. I'm doing like all right, we got to make sure that this thing doesn't fall apart as it's orbiting the planet.
Holy
kind of stuff.
Shit, man, it's gotta be. You've got to get bored talking about your job to people you just meet.
I don't, because I'm a huge nerd and I get so excited about it.
Can you tell me how you got to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory?
Yes.
What was your sort of professional and educational track?
Sure.
And because it seems to me like JPL has to be like the Oscars for actors.
It is very much like one of the higher up, like, aspirational places to work if you're in the little pocket of nerd engineer world that I'm in. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So what was your track? What was the yellow brick road tiling that brought you there?
So like I said, I was very like sciencey. Even when I was a kid, I was but not so much science. Well, yes, sciencey, but also like engineering. There's a little bit of a difference. I love that how I kind of think about it. Most of the time when you're thinking like a mad scientist on TV, oftentimes I would say that's actually more of a mad engineer, because they're not like doing, like mutation cell research. Usually they're like building a death ray, and death ray is totally an engineering thing. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So,
see, I feel like this is a nuance we should all be clear on.
This is absolutely, this is a nitpick that I need to nail down for people.
Important
It's
stuff
important,
here, man.
Yeah. I like building stuff and putting stuff together, making little machines. I went to San Francisco State for my undergrad to do mechanical engineering. And then I did grad school. I decided after I graduated, I was like, I don't want to join the workforce just yet. So
Don't do it.
So I went to grad school at UCLA, which is what brought me into the area. I stayed here. I wanted to work for NASA broadly since I was like 7, I think, but I wanted to work for JPL specifically, like since back in high school. And I applied. They they probably got freaking sick of me because I applied like 60 times. Like even before I graduated, like every single job that I thought like I could qualify for that, I sent an application in, and some hiring person somewhere was probably like, just give her an interview.
Something.
Just like,
do we have some sort of janitorial thing we can give her?
Like, can we just make her file papers, or like, I don't know. But,
hell yeah. Knock their door down, right?
So when I graduated from UCLA, I got my master's degree in science with a focus on robotics. And I worked at Raytheon Technologies for a couple years. I worked at Maxar Technologies for a couple of years. And then finally, I had one of the several thousand probably applications I sent to JPL came back to me, and they were like, hey, do you want to interview? And I was like, is it happening? Is the day come? And then
I got to get my hair dyed.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in there. I know exactly what I'm going to wear.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I did the interview. It was like surprisingly, because I've interviewed for a lot of engineering jobs already by that point, and this one was like a lot of. They want to know how your brain works. So it's not so much asking you about like your job experience as it asks you like problem solving questions. So it's like I was given a series of like hypothetical questions that like involved a knowledge of physics. And it was like, what do you think, what would happen in this scenario? Like one of the questions I was asked was, there is like a glass of water that has ice floating in it up to a certain level, and the ice melts. What level is the water at now? Like if this is 0, like what % above or below do you think the water line is? And you have to just like try and like, okay, I know that ice is denser than water is and it floats, but as it melts, it's going to compact, but also it's about the same buoyancy. So like it should be the same level once the ice melts, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So like you have to like work through those problems, which was a very nerve-wracking interview. My interviewer asked me, do you have a whiteboard? Because we were doing it over, because it was like, this was during COVID. So they were like, do you have like a whiteboard? Because I want you to draw diagrams.
Show me the way your brain works.
Exactly. So I had to go, because I do have a whiteboard.
Of course you do, honey. Of course you do. Yeah. Dawn, do you have any wigs or funny glasses in your home?
What a ridiculous question. Who do you think I am?
I know. Yeah.
So I had to go get a whiteboard out and draw diagrams, and they decided, all right, she can work here. Put her on the Mars sample return project. Then it was, and now we're here.
Now, did they ask you any like emotional questions, like psychological questions to weed out if you're a real weirdo?
Not really. Like the kind of like the what is it called? The Myers-Briggs like personality. They don't really go
or
into
your
that.
Pottermore, is she Slytherin? Because that's fine. Cunning. We can use cunning.
we can use this. No, I think that there's like a baseline assumption that everybody who works at JPL is like a little bit of a freak in some kind of way.
Yeah.
But you need that. You need them to have that real love of the game.
Did you know about Jack Parsons before you worked at JPL?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I knew that like the name because when you at some point in school they made me watch October Sky, and they mention him because it like goes into that whole thing.
So good.
About honestly, very good movie. Highly recommend. Yeah. And it's one of those things where like just because of the field of interest that I had, I knew who he was as one of the founders of JPL. But it was actually through doing Cults, Cryptids, Conspiracies, I was researching Aleister Crowley for that podcast. And Jack Parsons' name came up. And I was like, is that the same Jack Parsons? We've also talked about Scientology on that podcast.
Yes.
And Jack Parsons' name came up in relation to L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I gotta look into this guy. So I've
this touches so many of my interests
this
at
is like
the same time.
There's a Venn diagram, and he's in the middle.
Really
he's in the middle of it as this weird little guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to know more about this man. And so when Ryan was like, oh, I'm gonna do HILF, we're talking about Jesse James, I'm so excited. I was like, oh my God, I would love to talk about Jack Parsons and what a weird little sex weirdo he was.
What
and
a
also
weird little sex weirdo he was. We're gonna get his panties down, and we're gonna absolutely our panties. Who knows what's gonna happen to our
who's
panties?
to say where this will take us?
We have a whole fucking in front of us. I also
Yes.
learned about him when I was researching Aleister Crowley, because I have a
Amazing.
HILF episode about Aleister
Yes.
Crowley. And similar at the end, you're like, oh, and don't forget L. Ron Hubbard and the founder of JPL.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
touch this weird guy in some way. And I remember when I got to that part, because Aleister Crowley makes me so mad. It was one of the few HILFs where I was like, because I can kind of fuck anything, you know what I mean? But when
not this man.
Yeah, like the more I got into him, the more I was like, this guy sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like, it's
yeah, for sure.
totally interesting. But what a douche.
I need to put that on my queue. I need to listen to that episode
To
because I
talk to
feel
Ryan,
like
she probably has.
she probably can give me a play-by-play synopsis of the whole
Exactly.
thing.
Like, well, it was 1885. But at the end, they're sort of like, and Scientology, and that L. Ron Hubbard wasn't just an addition to Aleister Crowley, but that
Yeah.
those three together, three intermixed at the exact same time.
That was such a freaking bizarre time of history that must have been.
Come on.
But also, like, how badly do you wish that you could have just, like, been there to watch, you know? Like, how desperately, I don't know if I want to take part in whatever's going on, but I do want to just, like, I want to know what about it.
I know. And like the good news is I have some pretty detailed accounts
Oh, fantastic.
of like what went down on Orange Grove Avenue. And the good news is that lots of people did exactly that. Lots of people were like, I don't know about this, but I would be very interested to wear them cloaks and just hang out for a night.
Yeah.
And
Hell
as long as I can
yeah.
leave whenever I want. And you know, like, and they wrote it down. And
I'm so excited to hear about this. I am so stoked.
oh my God. Okay, well then this brings us to our sources for my history today. The primary source was a book called Strange Angel by George Pendell. It was written in 2005, which was the same year that Sex and Rockets came out, which is the John Carter and Robert Anton Wilson. 2005, man, big year for Jack.
Yeah, the people that was on the brain, I guess.
Yeah, and Sex and Rockets was one of those books that, like, you know it's a big deal because people who don't give a good goddamn about history are telling me about it. And I'm like, oh, you read historical nonfiction?
This
like,
must be a good read then. Yeah.
Must be great. I also read the collected writings of Jack Parsons.
Ooh.
Which is a real mindfuck.
Oh, I bet.
Virtually impossible to navigate. I'm not going to say I read it all because yuck. But some of it, very, very colorful.
I imagine.
Here's a little snippet.
Oh, I'm so here for this.
I hiked Don Quixote. I live on peyote, marijuana, morphine, and cocaine. I never knew sadness, but only a madness that burns at the heart and the brain.
Oh my God. I love and hate that in equal measures. Like, I am so enamored with it, but you just know that, like, if he were still alive, he would be the dude with the acoustic guitar at any party.
You read my mind exactly.
Yeah.
I want to start our Hilfing with a story.
Oh,
to
please.
just set the mood.
Regale me.
Okay, so come with me,
I'm here.
Cristina, to June 17th, 1952.
Okay.
Okay, it's 5:08 p.m. in beautiful Pasadena, California. There is a huge rocketing explosion. Right? Rattles windows 2 miles away. People stop in their tracks and like look around. And then as you do, okay, nothing else seems to be. I can't smell anything.
Yeah.
I can't see anything. Maybe a crane fell. It's a busy time. Things are
Right.
getting built, right? In the city of Pasadena, though, they're like, fuck these fucks. Because shit like this is kind of happening. Like, it happens all the time. You know what I mean? But they can't tell kind of exactly where, but this was a big one. That was serious. But there were 2 residents of Pasadena where that explosion happened underneath them. They live above. And they were very clear on where that came from. They, as one does, run out. And they look at the first floor of this coach house where they have just started renting rooms upstairs. And girl, it's as if it had been sat upon by a giant. Oof. The walls are all a little bent in the middle.
Yeah.
Every window blown out. The frames are just hanging there limp like dead teeth, right? Couple of doors are still on their hinges, but them hinges ain't attached to the door frame. And there's paper all over the fucking place, all over the lawn. And they run in, see exactly what's going on. They're looking through the open door.
All of the debris about, yeah.
Yeah, plaster and shards of wood. And it also smells like fuck, right? But even as they're walking in, they can see the papers that are fucking weird. There's a bunch of diagrams and shit. And then, picture of a weird thing with horns. That's a little unnerving. And then a picture of an exploding bomb. Looks like a bomb. I mean, they can actually see just the face up paper. They get inside. There's this big machine and they lift the machine off the thing. And there is the broken body of a man, a pool of blood around him, his blood all over his shirt. And the way that I kind of imagine it from all of the like police reports and everything is like Two-Face from from Batman,
Harvey
right?
Dent.
Completely.
Yeah.
One side of his face is just kind of hanging there expressionless. The other side has been essentially blown off. They can see the white of the bone and the white of the teeth. The eye is gone. His arm is gone. There's just this place of blood. His legs have been shattered.
Oof.
And they lift this thing off of him. Oh my God. And they get him up, like sitting up against the wall. And this bitch is alive.
Ugh, could you imagine?
Can you imagine?
I would not want to.
No.
Yeah.
And he's moaning and he's groaning. All right, we've got Greg Gansey. He's one of the guys who's there. He's an actor. He's in his 20s. He's having a rough time. Then you've got Martin Forshorg. He's another renter, and he's with his mom, who he's like, holy shit. And they kind of move all this up. And then mom says, I have something on the stove upstairs. So she actually... goes upstairs to finish what she's cooking.
Oh, hold on. Sorry. I forgot I have something.
Yeah.
Priorities.
This is nuts. This reminds me, we don't need another accident today. I'd hate to burn something.
Honestly, fair at that. I mean, that can't blame her. Yeah.
Forethought. So she runs up, but these two guys are like, oh my God, we have to go tell his wife.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know he's our landlord. He's the guy who rents us these rooms. We got to go up to the big house and tell his wife. And they get to the house and they knock on the door and it's not his wife. It's his mom. Answers the door, Ruth. And they're like, hi, okay, listen, your son, he is bad shape. And there's been an explosion. She goes into a blind panic, just starts screaming, and she's losing her shit. She goes so bad shit crazy at the news that they call a doctor for her.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, you go ahead. You take a minute. We're going to go back down there and figure it out. They go back down to the shed when he's still there and they're waiting for the ambulance to come and stuff. And they see a bunch of hypodermic needles around. And they go, we don't need this.
Yeah.
We don't need all this. So they hide those. We don't want to get caught. We don't want
to be
caught, right? Then they go later upstairs into his room and they see some very big paintings of Satan. Not canvases, just on the wall. Lots of pentagrams. Spooky shit.
Yeah.
Up in his room. And they actually paint over
so the cops don't
a
see
lot
it?
of stuff. The cops get a gander at it, but they cover it up awfully fast. They're like, we just ran here. You know what I mean?
We don't want this to be a big thing.
Exactly.
This is like the Russian nesting doll of crazy that they are unfolding.
It gets weirder, right? Because then they're like, who is this guy? They're like, Jack, his name is Jack Parsons.
Yeah.
He's our landlord. And they go through like, well, what do we know? What does the public record know about this Jack Parsons?
Yes.
And they go, well, he works for an aerojet company. He has worked for an aerojet company, but he doesn't currently. Currently, he works as a Hollywood special effects manufacturer. They said he teaches at Caltech, but there's no record of him having ever attended Caltech. And there's no evidence that he ever got paid or taught it there. That doesn't. They're saying he's a professor at Caltech. He hasn't published anything or written anything. There's no journals. Like, who the fuck is this? Dead goobery guy with like no face, right? He quickly, after they get him into the ambulance, passes away. They go up to tell Ruth, right? She has been given sedatives because she's lost her mind.
Right.
She swallows the entire bottle of sedatives.
Jesus.
And is dead herself.
Really?
In less than 4 hours.
Wow. Jesus.
But then they're like, God damn, what a weird day.
Yeah.
Where is his wife? We know he's married.
Right.
Where is she? She finally rolls in. Everyone calls her Candy. But that's not her name. Marjorie Cameron is her real name. And they're like, we're so sorry your husband's dead. What can you tell us? And she's like, oh, no. He was a chemist, and we were about to leave on our holiday to Mexico. And they literally look at her car, and it has a trailer full of fucking tennis rackets and swimming supplies. And she's like, I'm an artist. They have her canvases and everything. And they're like, wow.
Ooh, have we got a damper for your vacation?
This is all very strange. Yes.
Yeah.
And Jack Parsons, this mangled dead man that is a complete mystery, he's 37 years old, is the reason that America got into outer space.
Yeah.
Here's what I thought would happen after I told that story.
Yes.
What happened? But it's actually, there's no mystery in what happened.
He was making rocket fuel in a coffee can and he dropped it.
That's exactly
the man
what
was
it was.
making rocket fuel in a coffee can in his house. He had a chem lab where he's making rocket fuel in his house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he dropped it and it blew up.
Yeah.
Because that's what rocket fuel does.
Well, there was a whole very colorful History Channel, bless their hearts, documentary that implied this was a mystery and was like, he had powerful enemies. The government wanted to keep him silent. And they're intriguing theories. And they built a whole crime scene and tried to like reenact what happened to him. And I was like, the real mystery here is how did he not blow his ass up
sooner?
A lot.
Yeah.
Any other time in his life.
100%. I will say, again, as like an engineer working in the field, I obviously like my job is very computer based. There's not a lot of like, I'm like doing a lot of like 3D modeling, CAD, that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of blowing things up in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But there is like a sense of familiarity you get with things that could kill you in engineering, where you just become a little bit blasé about like, oh yeah, if you put your fingers here, it will just suck you into the machine and you'll die. There was
So don't do that.
Just so don't do that. Like I've been in clean rooms where they're like, oh, here's your cream, by the way, rub this on if you get any of the acid on you, because it will burrow into your skin and it will dissolve your bones. So like, dude, just don't touch that. And like, you just kind of get used to that. Wow. I absolutely understand this man just being like, oh yeah, coffee can's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine. I do this all the time as like the reason why you can do it right now. Yeah. One of his best friends said he had really sweaty hands. And he probably dropped it. And then they even were like, buddy, you can even tell by reconstructing the scene, something slipped out of his hands and he tried to reach down and grab it before it hit the ground. That's why it was like one arm, half his.
Yeah. It's like the whole reflex of like, oh God.
God bless you, Jack. Yeah, he blew his ass up. It was an accident. He definitely, if he wanted to kill himself, this guy was a very exciting guy. Very colorful, loved the devil. If he was going to end his life on purpose, he was going to do something.
Oh, it would have been so much more theatrical.
Exactly.
For sure. There would have been like a whole 10-step ritual involved.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to kill Jack Parsons, granted, you could just throw a coffee can in a room where he was mixing things, and people like you and me would be like, "Oh yeah, he totally dropped
blew himself up." Yeah,
you know what I mean. So yeah, but that's true for all of us.
Yes,
to some extent. One of the things I want to kind of remind myself of, and all the listeners, is in all people and in all times, the value of your self, the things that you are good at, are valuable insofar as they are useful at the time. We say when I introduce you and during your podcast, she's a rocket scientist, because it's shorthand for, you can be humble if you like, the tantamount of human intelligence. A rocket scientist isn't equated with a genius, a brilliant mind. It's like they're a Swedish model. You're like, oh, I get it.
The hottest you can be. The pinnacle of the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was not the perception of rockets or rocket scientists until 1942.
Yeah.
And it isn't just that it wasn't an esteemed science pursuit. It was considered ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah.
Baffling.
Why would we care about, why are you wasting time on this? Yeah.
Absolutely. It is, according to everyone, actually impossible to escape the Earth's atmosphere. We will never, ever be able to do it.
Yeah.
The only people who think it's possible think you can do it with a rocket. They have some concept of, an object in motion bullshit in a vacuum. And they just actually, there was a House of Representatives as late as 1941 stood up and laughed at a guy.
Jeez.
Said, this guy has delusions of going to the moon. He's a crackpot.
Egg on his face in about 29 years. Yeah. 28 years, something like that.
Exactly.
It's just reminding me of like when they thought that like women can't go over 60 miles an hour because their uterus will explode or something like that. When trains started becoming a big thing. Yeah.
Yes.
It's that whole idea.
It's so ridiculous. And how I wonder, right? We're all guilty of it, having these just assumptions of a thing that is simply impossible.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I always like to kind of come back to the stuff like this, man, where you're like, by 1941, this guy said it was ridiculous, made fun of him, called him a crackpot. It was like 15 years later.
Yeah.
15 years, that's nothing.
We were sending, the explosion of rocketry. It was so swift and it had so much blowback. And it was one of these things that like, you had to fight to get funding. You had to literally like be in the trenches for war to get funding to fund rocketry because nobody cared. Nobody thought it was like, that's just like a stupid sci-fi thing. That's in the magazines. We don't care about that.
That's exactly a stupid sci-fi thing. I mean, that is exactly right because rockets were only ever featured in science fiction. And that's one of the first sort of intersections with Jack Parsons is he's born in 1914 and World War I, among other things, was a big impetus for sci-fi, spiritualism, the occult. People generally just had their perceptions of reality fucking shattered, man, because that war was so fucking shattering.
Yeah.
And this is where when he's a kid, right, Jack Parsons starts to consume all of these like amazing stories and science fiction and stuff. And I'm very curious to know what was your relationship with science fiction in proximity to your interest in science?
I am a massive nerd on all fronts. I'm a huge consumer of science fiction. I love like books and movies and TV shows. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I literally like my purse is a giant Star Trek symbol with all of my JPL mission pins in there.
God damn.
I wear I want people to know what I'm about, you know?
Yeah.
No, I'm a huge science fiction fan. And it's one of these things where like you sort of have to be to really push the boundaries because like in a similar way, I said recently to somebody, we were talking about things that we say, oh, that's impossible now. And then like in 15 years, they prove true. I always say like, I don't believe in ghosts, but if ghosts ever get proven to be real, I'm going to eat so much freaking crow. People are going to laugh at me so much because I was so confident ghosts weren't real. Yeah. But it's that kind of thing where like you have to believe in things that don't exist right now in order to do them. Because if you don't think it's possible, you won't try.
I think that's so interesting. I've always found the creative process and the scientific process to be so similar. Yeah. Because they really are about this. I've just conceived of this idea that is in my brain. And how do I render it into something that you can see and comprehend and interact with? Yeah. Even if it's only theoretical, let alone an actual dope robotic.
But how do I have this image in my brain? How do I put it in yours? How do I get it out and make it real in some way?
Yeah,
for sure.
And science fiction. For those of you who follow the podcast, you know that I'm obsessed with Frankenstein. It was my first episode. I love that. Mary Shelley is the mother of science fiction.
Oh my God, Mary Shelley is a figure. I just have to go back and listen to your entire, because I've listened to like 3. I gotta just listen to all of them, I guess, because like these all sound amazing.
Absolutely. And then we're going to like go on a road trip together.
Yes. And we're going to stop at every little weird like side hut where it's like the world's biggest yellow yard.
It'll just be pamphlets. Yes. Pamphlets from various roadside attractions.
The ideal.
Yes. But like that, Mary Shelley inspired the battery operated pacemaker. Like the guy who invented that said it was because I saw Frankenstein when I was a kid. And when I was looking through the quantity of scientists from the first half of the 20th century who draw their inspiration directly to Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, man, it will knock your fucking socks off.
Because it's such like the stories are so impactful at a young age and it gets you yearning. It gets you wanting to like find stuff out. You want to go out there and learn and explore and develop and
wonder. And I think that's why I love the fact that one of the rovers is called Curiosity, because I think that is one of the most important things, you know what I mean, that this implants in you. And for Jack Parsons, he is eating this stuff up. And he is born in the boom. Like this sci-fi, like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne were writing in like the 1880s, 1890s is when they were like first published. But then like publication itself, paper and the art of publishing became so easy that sci-fi was just getting like churned out in droves and amazing stories. And these things are predicting submarines and organ transplants and aerial warfare long before we had aerial warfare. And it's fascinating. It also corresponds with an era of education, which is they don't give a goddamn about a kid who's dyslexic and dreams too much and reads too much sci-fi.
Right.
Right. So Jack has like not a great time in school. And he also has his own disruptions, like the stock market crashes in 1929.
That's right, yeah.
He's 15.
Yeah.
He was raised a really rich kid. They lose it all. Right. And it's kind of great because it means he can't go to private school anymore. And it was like in private school, it was really trying to ham hand Jack Parsons into like a good little boy.
Yeah, there was some anecdote I heard about like him exploding toilets like in school, and it was like the whole threat of like, we are going to send you to military school if you do not act right, that kind of thing.
And he was sent.
Yeah,
because he was like, I know, but it was really fun blowing up toilets.
But like, what if
and he had a buddy too, Ed Foreman. Is his best buddy. They're both dyslexic. They're both brilliant. They're both into sci-fi. They don't both deeply believe that we can go to the moon. And they want very much to go to the moon. And it's kind of great that like he goes off to military school and then they lose their fortune in the stock market crash. And he has to come back and be like, oh no.
Oh darn.
Son of a bitch. And in addition,
I can't go to military school anymore.
Public school for old Jack. And then in addition to having to go back to school, he hooks up again with Ed, he has to get a job. And his job is at a mercury explosives company. So now
where he's got all of these chemicals just right at his fingertips.
Yeah, and Ed is a nut, and Ed has also dropped out of school, and he's a mechanic. So he's just like building motors, and Jack is building rockets, and they dream of how to make a rocket powerful and fast enough, essentially, to escape Earth's atmosphere. I mean, that's the math they're after, and neither of them are mathematicians, but they're fucking smart enough to know about practicing with fuel, black powder versus liquid. And Jack can actually like get his hands, you know what I mean, on some of this stuff.
Because wasn't he stealing it? He was straight up just like stealing it from his work.
You know what's really funny is you can always tell the sources like how they feel about Jack, because they'll simply say things like, he managed to acquire a personal stockpile. And I was like,
how did he manage this exactly?
Yeah, or through his connections at his job, he and Ed enjoyed. And I was like, okay, just stealing the shit. Okay. But also these guys, there's two things that are really helping them out. One is that anyone that works in this kind of rocketry is a loon, an ostracized loon, which means if they get a letter from two guys,
they're going to respond to it. They're just so stoked somebody's reaching out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, gentlemen, settle in, and here you go. You're going to get 4 pages on why I agree with you completely. And the New York Times was wrong when they called me a fucking quack, and whatever. And they also go to Caltech because Caltech, for all of its high renown now, and then, I mean, it was a respected school, is also just like the local college.
Yeah.
So they go down there and they're like, hey, we would like to build with, play with, manufacture rockets. What do you guys think? And Caltech was like, yeah, I don't know, we like weird shit like that. But absolutely no funding and absolutely no way. But why don't you go talk to this weirdo?
Yes.
Down the hall, also into your weird shit, but is in school here. His name is Frank Molina. And Jack Parsons, Ed Foreman meet Frank Molina. And that's where we're going to take a short break. And when we get back, we're going to find out what these two fucking weirdos do. Hey, before we jump back in bed with Jack, a moment to say thank you to those who fuel inject my rockets. My patrons. The latest to jump in bed with the pod include Jake D, Steve N, Drew S, Lisa B, Josh N, Christy H, Kara R, and Tori with an I. These folks are part of the reason why we now have video. Yeah, their support helps supply not only the books and subscriptions, which are necessary to get my legs around the research, but the technical stuff to get it all on camera. Okay, follow Big Comedy Network on YouTube to see it all. Then go to HILF Podcast on both Patreon and Instagram. And
Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow. Follow me, follow me, follow me, follow.
We are back for part 2. Oh my God. Of the fucking of Jack Parsons. We blew his face off in the first half.
I know. It's not a little death. That's a big death.
It's a big death.
Yeah.
And we haven't even gotten to all the devil fucking yet.
Yeah.
There's so much ahead. Here's what we've got ahead. We've got the Suicide Squad. We've got the sex cult. And we've got L. Ron Ugly fucking Hubbard coming our way. The part I call one weirdo equals a weirdo. But 6 weirdos equal a squad. Because as we rejoin our story with Jack Parsons, it's the 1930s, okay? And as it stands, rockets are still a ridiculous thing for weirdos and children. They are good for flares and fireworks. Airplanes, though, boy.
Big into airplanes. Love an airplane. So much airplane technology happening.
Lots.
Yeah.
We've got Amelia Earhart's done her thing. We've gone around the world. We have fought with these things in some wars. Girl, we love airplanes. They are the future.
All about it.
And them's already in LA. We got
Yes.
Caltech is up to its titties in airplanes. And lots of airplane technology is happening here, Lockheed and all these things.
Yes.
So when Jack and Ed, remember, who are not enrolled at Caltech or
This
anywhere
is such
else.
a good time in history. Again, I get nostalgic. I was not alive at all, but I get nostalgic for the days where you did not have to go through so many years of school. You could just roll up and do stuff.
For sure. Certainly in a new field, right? I feel
Yeah.
like there's always that moment where you're like, I should have started my dumb YouTube channel in 2006 when I lived on my boat. That would have really gone viral. I'd be super famous by back. And then you go, yeah, those idiots that we were all like, these idiots sitting with their phones, talking to themselves all day.
And now they're on top of the world. But it's one of those things where it's like you could just roll up having not being enrolled in Caltech at all and been like, what if we...
I got an idea.
What if we exploded some stuff?
Totally. Well, and that's what I find so fascinating because if you remember when we left off, Jack and Ed had just met Frank Molina.
Yes.
Right? And he's kind of peripheral, but he's into this shit. He's a student at Caltech. He's an assistant to a professor, and he's kind of like the idiot who talks about rockets all the time.
He was waiting for someone to let him speak on his hyperfixation. He was just like chomping at the bit for it, you know.
Not unlike when you and I sat down in front of these microphones today and we both like did the hands when we
we're both
mentioned
like,
Mary
oh my
Shelley.
God, yes.
Tell me everything. That's kind of the moment, yes, that the three of them have. And this guy, Carmen, who kind of runs the department, is like, you know what, you weirdos, go out there and blow up whatever you want. You know what I mean? We're not going to give you. You can use the lab after hours. I'm not kidding. Whatever you can find, and we already know that Jack is good at like fucking finding.
He can acquire
shit if
some
he needs
things
to.
through his connections.
Exactly. And every day things are getting a little more exciting, and it's hard to miss when these three guys are doing cool shit. Everybody knows about it because there's a big fucking explosion.
Because there's an explosion. Yeah, for sure.
And they eventually have to leave the campus, not only because of the explosions, but because they also almost asphyxiate themselves, of course. They, at one point, the cleaning staff is like, what the fuck, man? Everything's rusted. Like everything made of metal is just covered in an inch of rust. And they're like, oh, yeah. Okay, and then you know what I mean? They just like write that down. So eventually they get kind of sent out to the desert.
I heard it was like a thing where it was like literally Caltech was like, we are using too much of our budget trying to repair things from you. You have to get off of campus.
Yeah. And they, by the way, aren't giving them any money. All that Caltech is saying is like, if Frank Molina wants to spend time with you weirdos after hours,
then go for it.
Yeah. But then once they go out into the desert, they meet this guy Arnold. And girl, I tried to find more about this guy Arnold. He's about 20 years older than them. He's not enrolled or like a professor at Caltech, but he gives them $1,000. And he gives it to them in 1s and 5s. And he says, all I want is to be your official photographer.
Who is this man?
Right?
What? How?
Is he an alien? You put me on your cryptids podcast and I'll give you a whole theory.
Listen.
Because I looked, Wikipedia doesn't even have an active link next to his name.
Why does this man have just a bunch of 1s and 5s?
I don't know. We don't know where he got the money.
Is he?
We don't know how.
Is this like his big break into photography? Is this him just being like, please, I need to start photographing stuff somehow?
I have some of his photos. You can see if you go to Instagram, you can see some of his photos. And that $1,000 lasts a minute because it's 1935.
It's the 30s. That's a big chunk of change,
Big chunk of change. Not that long. Plus, as we said, Jack's stealing all of his shit. But what they eventually do with that grand is pretty exciting. And there's a team of 6 assembles. And like, of course, in our movie, they are now walking slow motion across the field.
There's some fog in the background.
There's fog. There's lots of suits. We all know that with the little mustache.
Yes.
Too. We've got a Chinese guy named Sen. We've got this guy, Arnold. We don't know exactly what he's doing. A guy named Apollo M.O. Smith.
What a name.
Jack Parsons, who for not for nothing, his real first name is Marvel.
I know.
Crazy.
I was so, when I first learned that, I was like, why would you ever change it? But I think it was because his dad's name was Marvel and his dad was an asshole. I think his mom was just like, we're not calling you that
Jack,
anymore.
how about that?
How do you feel about Jack?
Jack's good. Jack.
Yeah.
Jack's a nice sharp sound to it.
You don't get kids named Marvel anymore.
No. Not past the age of 15, apparently. And then Ed Foreman is in there too, bless him. The dropout who loves, I always picture him in my head as rolling up with the jeans and the leather jacket.
Hell yeah. The bad boy of the group.
And they're cool. And that is their reputation, man. They are just out there in the desert blowing shit up and doing cool stuff. And everybody wants to kind of hang out with them, but they don't know exactly why. And they're crazy. They're crazy, right? Nobody thinks they can do anything right. They're crazy.
Freaking hooligans out there blowing stuff up and literally also getting drunk at the same time. They are out there in the desert just like smoking and drinking and blowing stuff up.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then Jack is a witness in this huge court case, which is like the thing LA loves all about this, right?
Yeah.
So there's this whole drama with a corrupt cop who was accused of putting a car bomb in a guy's car and blowing up a colleague and an important figure in the crime.
He's like a expert witness for explosions.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So they come to Caltech and they're like, we got this case.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And we all know it's the 30s and it's nuts and it's corruption and it's, all of this stuff. And they're like, we need somebody who can like look at the car and look at the stuff and say definitive things and prove. And they were like, why do we have a guy for you? Okay. And old Jack, this is all he does. He plays with bombs long before he even got to Caltech. That was what he was doing at his job at Hercules Explosives, right? So he wears a suit everywhere anyway. But he comes up to the stand and he's young. And so the defense tries to be like, you're a bomb expert, eh? Well, what do you know about and some long fucking scientific name. And he's literally doing the like Clark Gable sort of leaning on his thing and playing with his mustache and stuff. And he looks at the crowd and the jury and he goes, I'm sorry if you guys had a hard time understanding that. It's just TNT. and then
everyone swoons a little bit. Yeah. Everyone's
panties.
like, ooh.
Panties. But the cop gets convicted. Based on part. So his name, Jack Parsons, was like, he is so hot.
He's in the news.
He's on a suicide squad. They call him the what? They call him the suicide squad. We got to get a picture. I mean,
yeah.
So they become a little famous.
Yeah.
And the military is not uninterested in stuff that blows up. We just don't understand exactly how we can apply this to anything.
Right. It's
because they have no imagination.
What do we need to leave the atmosphere for?
Right.
We don't need any of that. Not looking at necessarily like,
completely
the component parts.
And in 1938, they officially say, some bigwigs in the military say, rockets have no military application. And Molina is like, oh God, thank God. And he says, I lose all interest when it's a weapon.
That's fair. That's a lot of scientists. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, good, thank God. I'm glad. I want to be amusing in space. I don't need to be a threat out there.
Exactly.
Jack isn't so much into being a threat either, but he kind of was like, that's where the money was, though. And like it's easy for you to say Jack Molina because you are at Caltech. You probably have a job in this field. I'm dyslexic. I can't do math great. So if I don't get in with you guys, and this project isn't taking off right now, maybe I don't get to do rockets.
This is my gateway in.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it all kind of falls in there like, and it all sort of dissolves. It starts Suicide Squad sort of disbanded. There's people getting married. They're graduating. They're going on to graduate school. They're getting jobs. The band
breaks up. Yeah.
The squad goes back and Jack is like, that's fine. I'll just get married and live in Pasadena. I can probably be fine with that. And then what's that? A Satan fucking magic cult? Oh my God, what a perfect time for someone to want to fuck me with the devil's penis. Like I have literally have nothing to do. I'm very sad.
I got nothing else going on. Yeah.
And like, it's a match made in heaven because it turns out that the cult was kind of hard up and could really use a feather in their cap.
Yes.
Like Jack Parsons, right? Because this guy already says, I'm not a genius because of college.
Right.
right?
He's like an independent thinker. He's his own man. He's his own mind.
Right. And we don't know if he has money, but like we know that his mom kind of had money. Like he used to live in a mansion.
Because wasn't the house that like they lived on? It was called like Millionaire's Row or something like that. Yeah.
Incidentally.
Yes.
You know the house that Doc Brown lives in Back to the Future?
Yes.
5 minutes from Jack Parsons, Millionaire's Row. Those houses actually look a lot like that. That really cool, like swooping. So, and crazy, right? That Doc Brown was also kind of nuts.
It's all coming together.
I mean. But in 1939, he's lonely. His friends are all gone. Everyone's going Suicide Squad. And he goes to his first mass at the Church of Thelema, which is cunty, stinky old Aleister Crowley, stinky, funkin' old cult, which if you want to know all about them, I have an episode for you. It's linked in the show notes.
Fantastic.
But he meets people who like fucking the devil and he's in. And it turns out his wife, Helen, is like, I could fuck the devil.
She's like, I'll go along. I'll see what this is about.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like, I cannot deny that I'm really not that far away from going to like a freaking Satanist cult meeting just to see what it's about. I'm halfway there already.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, it would not take me. All I need is like, I've kind of gone this week.
Does Satan fuck you? Do you fuck Satan? I just want to know. I'm not saying I just want to know.
I don't necessarily want to participate, but I do want to know what's going on. Yeah. Again, I just like, I'll stand in the corner with the robes and watch.
Yeah.
Just like,
and to be fair, I think that is actually, to be fair, what Jack and Helen do at first.
Yes.
Because there is a whole initiating. It's a two-way street here. Maybe we, Thelema, maybe we don't want you. Which of course they do because
of course
the whole thing is you give money and shit. But
yeah.
But it does take them a couple of years to get initiated. I don't know exactly what they had to do to be initiated. I wish I did. When I do, I'll find out. But then, you know this from history. Surprise, 1938 is not the end of global warfare.
What? You're telling me there were more wars?
Isn't this crazy?
Wild.
It's nuts. It turns out in just a couple of years, the military's like, hey, guys, remember when you were like, jets? And they were like, no, we called them rockets. And they were like, we really prefer jets because rockets are still kind of crazy. It's literally why the word jet is used in Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yes.
And one of the first major inventions that they actually market and build with this when the Suicide Squad reconvenes, which is the JATO, JATO, which stands for the Jet Assisted Takeoff. And it's hilarious to me how long it takes them to be like, can we just not say fucking rocket?
Yeah. Like, can we just call it something else?
It makes everybody so uncomfy.
There is a specific point in history, which is like JPL actually lauds it as their birthday, like the origin of the company, even though it wouldn't actually go on to be founded like formally for several more years. But it is the day, and I think it was October, Halloween, which is also my birthday.
That's so spooky.
That is what JPL says is the formal like origin of the whole thing, is that Halloween where they were out in the canyon and they finally got the massive propulsive, because they had like this stationary setup where it was like the multi-stage fuel injection thing where there's like different times that different chemicals are mixing in, and it's like it took ages and ages of work and trial and error, and it's amazing they also have their fingers. And
it really is.
And then the second that they got that going, suddenly the military is like, we could propel planes with that.
Hang on. Yeah, exactly. And that was really like the particular puzzle at this stage that they're working on is the fuel, and it's of many things, because there's sort of like the ability to just create one like, right? But for a jet to propel and continually propel,
it's the sustained burn.
It's gotta have a thing where it doesn't all burn up at once and it's slowly released, and how do we do it and what kind of fuel? And that was really Jack's critter. But a lot of times when they're bringing the fuel to the test site, it blows up before they put it in the plane.
Honestly, should have been foreshadowing for much later down.
I mean, this is why when you're like, I don't think anybody tried to kill Jack.
I'm pretty sure
it was.
I think it was because it was making rocket fuel to coffee can. Yeah.
And that was like then it was like, okay, we got the fuel that can do it. And we even got it to where it can kind of sustain itself, but it's so volatile and we can't actually transport it. So this isn't actually useful for the military, because what they really want to do with these fucking things is be able to launch a plane from a ship.
Yes.
Until jets, you needed a really long, flat-ass runway. And that means that you've got to get into a patch of land and make it big and flat. If you've listened to my Amelia Earhart episode, remember how hard it was? She had to find a fucking island to land on to refuel, right? But if you got a jet, then you can do it.
The possibilities are endless.
They could go from a bunch of dumb shit to a bunch of fun, and they could go faster and higher. Oh my God, right? So when they're just like in the desert, like, how the fuck do we get these things on one of these here aerial planes, right? And this Boucher, and when they finally do it too, there's this moment where they're like, I wonder if we could do it just with the jets. So it's not like they have to use their propellers and get going, and then we turn on the jets. Can we go from like stationary?
Can we go from 0 to jet?
Right.
Yeah.
The way that they test it is they pull him behind the car. Boucher is literally holding onto a rope.
Oh my God.
Being pulled behind a fucking car. It works. It's crazy.
Here's the thing. So much science is just that. And it's like, I should say specifically, so much engineering is just that, where it's like, we need to test this. How do we make this work? Yeah, you can just hold the rope, right? Like, it's so much of it is just that, where it's like, you think it's like, obviously when it comes to like the final thing, they're doing all the tests. They're doing so much like due diligence. But like when you're in the prototyping stage, you'll do just about anything.
It's kind of why unions are the best and the worst. You know what I mean? They're the best because you can't have your boss be like, hey, Charles, would you hold on to this rope for a minute? And be like, sure thing, boss. Like, you can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you're in this kind of moment where 5 guys, like, this is our spirit of invention, and it's like,
they're just willing to go for it.
Give me the goddamn rope.
Yeah.
I'm going to get pulled behind this truck today, and goddamn, I don't know, but I'm in, you know? It's amazing, wild stuff, right? And then the real, like, heart-thumping moment for me, too, is because sci-fi is such a hero of Jack Parsons' story, but so is history.
Yes.
Because he finally figures out the perfect fuel hack for the JADO when he's taken a walk, and he smells the asphalt of nearby roofers. And he starts to think about the puzzle, the like historic puzzle that has been, what is Greek fire?
Yes.
In the Byzantine Empire, they had this secret chemical that was like blowtorch. They could torch their enemies. You could see it etched on things, and emperors would hide it, and they would murder people who kind of knew the secret to hide what is Greek fire. And he just kind of goes, oh my God, it's asphalt. Because it can be liquid and solid at the same time, and it's super transportable. It's not dangerous.
On its own. Yeah, absolutely.
And asphalt, girl, is what got us out of Earth's atmosphere. Like Greek fire. That's what it was.
It's a lot more cool when you say that it's Greek fire, you know, when you're like, Greek fire, launch the rockets.
Okay, so work is great. His skills are needed.
Yes.
Right?
This is the peak time in history for him.
Yeah. They have started a company, the Aerojet Company, to market, create, and sell these JADOs, the jet assisted takeoff system. They're going to be the ones who make it and do it. And they all pitch in $250 to start this company, and they're all going to be millionaires, right? And I mean, maybe if anybody actually gives a damn about these things, because maybe when the war's over, we won't ever need them again.
Maybe we'll never need war. Maybe we'll never have war again. Who's to say?
I mean, a lot of them are thinking, we kind of want war to end. That's
What we can dream.
Yeah. But when the like lover of the occult came in during his sort of lonely downtime, she never went away.
Yeah.
During this whole thing, Jack is devil fucking most of the time. He is giving the majority of his money to the Church of Thelema, which, if you can believe it, giving the church all of his money made them recognize a certain something special about him.
They're like, you know what, Jack? I think there's like a little... Boy. You're full of the magic with a K.
There's so much K magic.
There's so much magic with a K inside of you.
Exactly.
We really want you to be in our lodge, you know?
I'm going to get as close to you as I possibly can. I see exactly what your property value, personal value, personality value. Yeah. Exactly right. And Aleister Crowley himself comes to the Agape Lodge. Because at this point, there was a merge, just like they're a bank. Oh, that's weird. They have something in common with the bank. The OTO, which was this old sort of cult, merges with Thelema. But Aleister Crowley takes over them both. So it's this OTO, but practicing of Thelema. And the guy who currently runs the lodge is a guy named Smith. Okay. And Aleister Crowley feels, for some reason we can't quite put our fingers on, that
Aleister Crowley, who is living exclusively off of all of the money being sent in to this cult.
It's a mystery. I'm sure I don't have the depth of magic to comprehend what motivated him to want to remove this guy Smith and make Jack Parsons the head of that Agape Lodge.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a twisted knot to untie, because at the moment, Jack's wife, Helen, is also in the lodge.
Yes.
And fucking Smith, the current head of the lodge.
But also, Jack and Smith are also like bros.
Buddies.
They're super tight.
Absolute best friends.
Yes.
And Helen's 17-year-old sister, Sarah,
Yes.
AKA Betty.
Oh, Betty.
Jack's fucking Betty.
Yes.
Okay. And tells Helen, no big deal, I'm just more attracted to her.
Which is like such a wild thing. Because isn't it like, from what I remember, it was like this whole thing where like Helen was gone for a bit. Like she went away for a while, or she was sick, or there was some reason she was gone. And Betty was coming with them to the meetings ever since she was like, 17, to these sex magic meetings.
Right.
Like they're not always doing sex magic, but they're doing a lot
And
of
there's
sex
a lot of
magic.
like, maybe after the mass, there's a little sex.
Maybe
Maybe it's during the thing. Maybe
everybody's
it's after.
kind of high,
And there's a lot of encouraging.
Yes.
It's like there is part of the reason why they spell magic with a K is because this is Aleister Crowley's version of magic, baby.
Right.
And that means that cum and vaginal blood and menstrual blood. And if we get a lactating woman here, Hannah, we got placenta orifices, and everything is about sexual exhaustion and sharing of partners and finding your elemental in your soul. So yeah.
And also like what freaking Egyptian gods do you resonate with and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
But so like Helen is gone for a bit, but like Jack's like, oh, me and Betty we'll just keep going like normal. It's fine. And then during that time, they start like they're going to these, and it's like, well, Jack, what if you slept with Betty instead? And the two of them are like, maybe.
Let's give it a try.
Whoa. And then Helen comes back and he's just like, I'm so sorry. My wife, Helen. I just think your sister's hotter.
You get it. She's 17.
Yeah.
You get it, right?
Like,
and Helen shockingly is like, I totally get it. And she's pregnant with Smith's kid.
yeah, part of me wonders how much of that was her just being like, oh, thank God. Like, okay, cool. Because I was super into this, like, and then both of them were just like shaking hands, like, hey, do you want to still live together though?
They do, literally.
'Cause they do, yeah.
And
the
the thing
two
is, like,
couples
they
live together in the same house.
All four are friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think it shows the power of truth. Full disclosure. As long as everyone knows what's going on, it's
Yeah,
amazing what
full
you can
consenting.
get away with.
The power polycule of Thelema.
Yeah. She's 17 is problematic.
That incredibly.
But let's discuss
it is
the time
not
in which
legal at the time.
It is not
Also,
legal at
he
the
and
time.
Helen do not get divorced at this period. They are still married.
Still
legally.
married.
Yeah.
They do, however, get divorced eventually.
Yes.
In part because Jack Parsons is like, I'm not your baby daddy. So you can probably sort that out more easily if we're not married.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to take over the lodge.
I think I will be in charge, actually.
Because I've done a lot of drugs recently. And the devil fucking is giving me a certain clarity that maybe I am the chosen one. It is during this time in our buddy Jack Parsons' life that L. Ron Hubbard joins the Agape Lodge.
Yes.
Okay, because the World War II is over. It's 1945. Things have wrapped up. It's a nice, neat package over there. And L. Ron Hubbard is a veteran of that war.
Yes.
And he's very into sci-fi, and he travels in a lot of these same circles.
Because he was a fiction writer at first, wasn't he? Yeah.
And that's kind of, like we said, this is all, they're circulating together, right?
Yeah.
And he comes to the Agape Lodge, and he starts fucking Betty to hell. So now L. Ron Hubbard, and at this point, Jack has married Betty.
Yes.
So Helen and Jack have divorced.
Yes.
Betty and Jack have married. L. Ron Hubbard comes in and starts fucking Betty. Now, here's my theory. You want to talk about
Yes. Tell me your theories. I'd love
it
to
is
hear a theory.
during this period of time when L. Ron Hubbard and Betty and Jack are all living in the house at the same time that Jack starts to have some particularly vivid visions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think L. Ron Hubbard and Betty were full of shit. They lived across the hall. They knew when he did drugs. I think they were giving him voices and all sorts.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
No, 100%. Because this is also the time period where like he starts seeing stuff. He's like, there's poltergeists I'm summoning.
And
like,
there's secret passageways all over this house.
Phenomena that are happening. I don't know if you found in your research that a big part of their like bonding and friendship, the two of them, was because Jack Parsons thought that Hubbard like had a particular clarity for the spirits. Like he could see spiritual things particularly close. So he wanted him to be present as like a scribe for all of Jack Parsons' rituals, a lot of which involved jerking off. So he was like, Jack Parsons is like, my dude, Hubbard, my bro, can you stand in the corner and take notes while I jerk off in a ritualistic manner?
Hell yeah.
And that was so much of the time they spent together. So much of the time they spent together was just doing that.
Which is, I would feel like any amount of time.
Yeah.
Spent doing that is sufficient time.
It's maybe too much time.
Maybe too much time. Certainly sufficient time.
Depending.
But somehow, and this is why, of course, I smell fuckery all over this. And not even just jerking off fuckery, like real manipulation. Because somehow in the midst of this time, L. Ron Hubbard and Betty convinced Jack to give them his life savings. It's like 20 grand, which is a lot. They then are going to go to South America. They're going to buy a bunch of yachts. They're going to bring them back, sell them for a profit. And Jack is like, great.
This sounds great. This sounds
amazing.
Yeah.
And then even people within the OTO are like, I'm sorry, where'd they go? What? Where'd they go? They went, wow, Jack, right? And he starts to be like, wait, do you guys think that was weird?
It's like, was that like,
because like we all fucked the devil, but you guys all think that was weird. This is giving me pause.
It's like, it's one of those things where like somebody describes you with full confidence, like this scheme or whatever somebody told them. And you're like, how do you not see the glaring red flags here?
Totally. And that what is maybe the craziest part is he suddenly does.
Yeah.
He's suddenly like, yeah, they have all my money and they're just living on a yacht in Miami. And he files fraud charges and he like files him. He's like, bitch, give me my money. You're not doing that thing you said you were doing with the boats.
I think what I remember was because they were trying to get clearance from the US Navy to sail to China. And Jack Parsons is like, why are you going to China? That's not part of the yacht
selling the yachts.
Like, what are you doing? Yeah.
Crazy. And then Betty is like, no big deal. But if you pursue this, I'm going to tell everybody you fucked me when I was 17 because that was still illegal. And he was like, all right.
Give me a little money. You got me there.
This is what we call a low point. I think anyone would agree. It's a low point. And Jack comes back.
Oh, wait, did you read about the curse though with this? The curse he put on them?
No.
So when they were going to leave for Miami, because he put like a thing about, he was like, they're doing fraud. They stole my money. They told me they were going to like invest. I was investing in like their yacht selling business, but they stole my money and they're leaving. He did like a thelemic magic working to like curse them, to prevent them from being able to leave Miami. And then a storm actually appears in Florida and prevents them from sailing out.
I like that.
And if you were either Betty or Hubbard in this moment, you have to think like, but did he actually like do it though? Hold on. Like
right?
You gotta be double questioning things at this point where it's like, well,
shit.
Hold on, did it actually work though? Because Jack believed it worked.
Yeah.
For sure. That whole incident firmly planted. He was like, I can do magic. I summoned that storm and stopped them from escaping.
Oh, that's so fascinating, man.
Yeah.
See, and I thought it was even more obscure than that because he was trying to literally summon a demon. And I was like, you did. His name's L. Ron Hubbard. And he just took your fucking wife and all your money
Stole your
and
girlfriend,
ran off.
yeah.
And he's going to start a cult and it's going to suck in a lot of other people and their money. So you did kind of create.
You
but I
did.
didn't know he actually made man. And it explains actually what happens next. That he has this new like surge that you
Like
describe
confidence
of like belief.
of like, for sure.
Because he goes back to his power lines. Shortly after this, and he's like, I'm going to get me a new girl. And he summons, he's like, I need a girl. And like, there's a lot, Aleister Crowley established too, you got to masturbate on a thing. It's a big deal.
It's there's a whole ritual involved.
And he's also put out, it's how L. Ron Hubbard came, he put out an ad in the paper for renters that is literally like, don't believe in God, love fucking, do I have a room for you? Okay, I mean, literally his ad is like calling all weirdos, okay? So after he performs this ritual under his power lines to summon a new woman, what do you know? There's a hot new redhead just arrived from Iowa.
What are the odds?
A hot dog, her name is Candy. Great. And Candy and Jack have a love affair that is also very complicated. But as this like World War II is over, he is now, as you can suppose, the Red Scare doesn't treat our guy Jack very well.
No.
NASA and JPL, I don't want to cast aspersions. The scientific powers that be are perfectly comfortable hiring Nazis because they're not a threat.
Right.
The communists, we actually...
We draw the line there.
We draw the line.
This is probably a good moment to put a little asterisk where it's like, I do not speak on behalf of JPL.
Exactly.
With that, if these
we all have a
thoughts or
complicated
opinions.
history. Exactly. I wore these scrunchies when I was in middle school. This is what I did. This is what happened.
But a big thing is like when it comes to rocketry, the history of rocketry, all of our most, I shouldn't say all because like Jack Parsons is right there, but the vast majority of our most influential scientists were German scientists. A lot of them explicitly Nazis that were like, hey, we'll let you come over and keep doing your science stuff as opposed to literally putting in jail forever as long as you do it for us in the military. Like
And the other side of that coin, 100% happened. The other side of that coin is there are plenty of genius, brilliant scientists who were forced to work for the Nazis.
Yeah, because they recognize like you are the technological mind. Right. I'm going to make you use that for us.
Exactly. But at the same time, they are looking at people like Frank Molina and Jack Parsons, who were rightfully skeptical of capitalism. They were like, buddy, I lost it all in 1929. It didn't work.
But also in that period of time, like being a communist was kind of like the counterculture thing.
Right.
Like if you were interacting with like the artsy crowd, like the actors and the artists and the musicians, all of them were meeting up at these communist meetings.
Yeah.
That was just like the place to be.
Totally. And it was really had unified so many of Jack Parsons' like social groups. He himself actually wasn't particularly political, but there's no way if you're drawing X's through anyone who touched communism that you ain't going to X out this weird pervert.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
With all these wives and all these kids and travels all over the place. He loses his top security clearance. And he's one of those unique personalities, as we have outlined, who isn't highly employable.
Yeah.
Without this job, this specific job, there's not a lot he can do. This guy starts pumping gas and making special effects for Hollywood films. Of course, there's a huge boom in war films. He specializes in squibs.
He specializes in making things go boom.
Go boom. And squibs, for those who ain't in the business, is when you got to make it look like somebody got shot. It's the little explosive that the actor wears that blows out so it looks like a bullet hit him. That was kind of one of his particular specialties.
And then those are the ones that also sometimes like the blood, fake effect, that whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
And that's not going great. He had tried many times to get security clearance back.
Didn't he open a laundromat at some point?
He does. He thinks he puts 11 grand. He thinks to figure that's one of the reasons why he's under a laundry machine. When the thing blows up, they got to lift this thing off of him.
That makes sense.
He's kind of storing his shit in there, right?
Yeah.
And he wants, of course, to make more money and get back, and mostly just to be back in this rocketry stuff. And his last try was with the newly formed country of Israel.
Yes.
Who we love, right? They're our buds. And they're like, hey, Jack, we don't need you, of course, anything top secret. But we were just wondering if like you could give us like maybe like a budget for like what it might cost if we wanted to make a rocket system. And he's like, yeah, 100%. And he has his secretary go ahead and write it up. And the secretary is like,
at the company he's actively working for right now.
and she's like, this is top secret on top. And he's like, I know. That's why I'm only sharing it with Israel. You know what I mean? And like when he's actually like cornered on this, he pleads ignorance that I think is 100% accurate. He's like, I honestly didn't know I couldn't do that.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, that's why we absolutely can't let you near.
That's why we're taking the security clearance away.
And so he and Candy do indeed plan on going to Mexico. They're not really fleeing the law. It's just sort of he's literally like, I'm going to make fireworks. I'm going to make the best damn fireworks Mexicans have ever seen. And she's got the car loaded up with her painting and shit. And he gets a call right before they're about to get in the car from his buddies at the Hollywood. Really quick before you leave, buddy, please, can you just
one last minute
make
order.
us one last minute order? Which is probably why his ass was sweaty and he ran out there with a coffee can.
Yeah.
And he blew his shit up. Which is not the most dramatic way to end a really great HILFing. And yet, neither was the way that Jack Parsons left this world. But that, my new friend, Cristina. Oh my God, that is the HILFing.
Yes.
Jack
Absolutely.
Parsons. Holy shit.
He is such a colorful character. He's got his highs and lows. He does some absolutely amazing things, some absolutely terrible things, some absolutely just fascinatingly bonkers stuff.
Moon.
Was convinced that his wife was the reincarnation of the earth goddess that he summoned with his jerking off rituals. Absolutely convinced of that.
Sure.
And it's like, that guy is one of the big reasons we're in space.
Come on.
Yeah.
You can't separate the two.
No,
it's one of the
yeah.
reasons why sometimes like pop stars get canceled, like Michael Jackson. And I'm like, you don't have to like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But can we separate the music from the man?
You can acknowledge the advancements that somebody made in history, in a genre, in a field, while also being like, and they were the absolute worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we can't, then we're in real trouble, you know, and not just in our science fields, in our individual lives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I do have a question that I hope you can answer. Oh, and also, do you think that the FBI is now onto me? Did I get some kind of thorough scrutiny, like background check? Because they were like, I'm sorry, what is the name of the podcast you're going on?
I don't think that I did have to tell JPL. I was like, I am going on to, so there's like some memos. There's probably like a memo in their social media department where it's just kind of like, what's HILF? Where they were like, by the way, you don't speak for the company when you're talking on this podcast. And I'm like, I'm so aware. I'm so aware.
I just love that so much.
I have to we're probably all, just by the pure nature of the kind of crap we're Googling, we're probably all already on an FBI list, right?
Imagine. I think the only thing that would be suspicious is if you were like cooking recipes. That's literally all you've ever looked up. Okay.
Nothing weird ever once at 2 a.m. Like,
No, right.
yeah.
Okay, you're fake. You're a spy. Oh my goodness. Chrissy, I have to say thank you again so much for assigning me this fuckbilly. Wow. For sharing your time and your expertise. Tell me you'll come back.
I would love to. I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
And for taking me on this journey, because you brought up like so many little details that I didn't know. You made the adventure so colorful. It was a road trip. I had a delightful time. Would do it again.
Yes.
I'm here for it.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thanks again to Cristina Van Epps. Okay, go check out her podcasts, I Seduce the Dragon and Cults, Cryptids, and Conspiracies. We have links to both of them in our show notes. All right, and then you know what? Watch Instagram for the inevitable day that she and I, Thelma and Louise, a road trip into Area 51 or something. And speaking of road trips, listen, the next new episode is on the Grand Canyon, and it's with my real life husband, Andrew Melby. He and I recently drove with our daughter from Minneapolis to Los Angeles, and on a stop in the Grand Canyon, man, he had questions, and so I bought a book, and here we are. So you're going to hear about the mindfuck the Europeans had when they first saw the Grand Canyon, learn some of the coolest legends from deep within the canyon, and then just crazy stories like the time a mysterious, pantsless man washed up on a riverside base camp with this unbelievable tale to tell. Oh, until then, our theme song was composed and performed by Kat Perkins. A reminder that you can find my sources, links to the books, documentaries, and articles I reference in the summary of this episode, or by emailing us, hilfpodcast@gmail.com, or messaging us on social media @hilfpodcast. If you'd like to leave a little cash on the nightstand, so grateful. You can find me on Patreon or buy me a coffee. Links to these and more are all in the show notes. This has been HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck with Dawn Brody. I'm Dawn Brody, reminding you that history is a party and everybody's coming.